I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 10. Now, getting started today, we're finally going to dive headfirst into the sewer. Today we're going to explore into the sewer. Wait, hold on. Today we're going to expand our power infrastructure into the sewer. There, that sounds a lot better. And this means I need space for things. So I am working on kind of a template, give or take, like for rooms. And the cool part about building a template like this is we can use like the cut paste tool to copy this, and then we can just simply paste it into the new locations. And there's actually a mode in there that allows it to delete the blocks that it's taking the place of. So if I can just simply get a base template like this in place and kind of get a design for it, then I think ultimately we can use that and then modify it from there. But we are going to need some space, because today I want to get into some more auto crafting with applied energistics, but also use that to expand our power infrastructure. So now with the room kind of set up, and I think this is giving off a really nice like sewer factory vibe right here, I really want to add some nice lights. So some nice lighting can be achieved by, I think, adding some chains like this and dropping the chains down just like so. And then what I can do is I can use these illuminate panels, and hear me out. These panels combine. So I'm going to need like a block, for example, behind this. But if we just grab any kind of block, I love how I have so much inferium that it's just becoming my block placer. We can place it like this. So we get this like hanging light feature, which, oh man, it's just glorious looking. I love this. So you can't tell me this doesn't look so cool. Oh, I love the light panels. And there we go. I now have this whole area copied with the copy paste tool, and I just need to load it into the template manager with a piece of paper. That way I can use it later on and also load new things into this. I know I've shown this quite a bit, but I just want to preface how powerful this tool can be for building your own bases, right? It is just super, super useful. This will be like, I don't know, a sewer room. And once you have it named, all you have to do is just hit save, and voila. We now have a room that we can put in. Oh, I almost forgot to add the floor. So I can also redo that by taking it back out, and then I just have to get the floor down. And this is how I've been doing this, by the way. I'm just kind of stepping back and increasing this or decreasing this. I actually need to increase it 1 and drop it down 1, and then hit confirm. It's going to recopy all of those blocks. Then we can take it and we can resave it. And now we can see the floor is now saved. Oh, I probably don't want the template manager in there. So I can go ahead and remove this just like so. And believe it or not, if you open the settings up and just hit confirm, it will then recopy the same area. So you don't have to worry about loading this or anything like that again, or re-clicking. Everything should just work. Hit save again, and now we have the room, but without that manager in the middle. So now, just to show this being placed in, it's such a cool thing to actually watch this happen. I'm going to drop it down, and I want to make sure that replace blocks is turned on. And this should replace all of the blocks whenever we go to paste this in. Let's see. We also want to probably anchor it for right now, because it is in the position that I want it to be in. And so, hoping that we have all of the blocks in our inventory, I should be able to just right-click. And notice it's going to get rid of everything in its path. Uh-oh, we may have a water problem. But it's going to try and get rid of most everything in its path. Fill it in. And there we go. Oh boy. It is quite a mess, isn't it? The thing is, we can just keep right-clicking until all of the blocks are pasted in. And with minimal effort, there we go. It is now pasted in. I did have to block in the fluids, but as soon as the fluids are gone, it seems to handle it just fine. Now, with all of that fun stuff out of the way, we can really start to dive into some new mods. For example, ExtendedAE is going to be probably one of the most powerful mods that we use and incorporate into applied energistics. And what this mod is going to allow us to do is have wireless channels, essentially. But that's not all that it does, because honestly, it makes circuit crafting as easy as possible. And honestly, it puts all of my prior setups for crafting circuits, just puts it straight to shame. Now, the only issue is getting started with ExtendedAE does require a little bit of, well, some grinding. I'm going to talk about that. See, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create a intro crystal. And this is like the main crafting ingredient now for ExtendedAE. And I will say that it may seem a little confusing up front, but if you did set your guide button Now remember, if you set your guide button for AE, everything has documentation, which is beautiful, especially for this mod. So if you're not wanting to look at the documentation, then I'm going to show you kind of exactly what needs to be set up to at least get you up and running. And so long as we reach a certain number of clusters, we can then break them down, and just like our other Certus, we can loop it. But hear me out. Later on down the road, we should gain access to a tier 6 seed for intro. Still not sure why it's tier 6, but yeah, tier 6 intro seed down the road. So now let's get started with this. The first thing we're going to need is just some intro seeds. That's pretty straightforward. Now, after this, we're going to need Fluix. And if you already have yourself some Fluix seeds, this is going to be super, super easy. So here you go. We have a Fluix block and we have some intro seeds. Then I also recommend a very simple accelerator setup, much like this, where we have them powered from the bottom, super straightforward. Then we place the Fluix block and then we just right click it with that seed. And what it's going to do is it's going to turn into budding, fully energized Fluix. And that's it. We just need to wait for it to fully grow and then we can harvest it. Right now it's an intro bud. And then when it turns into the cluster, you can break it. And that's going to get us the intro crystal. Now what happens is this turns into a mostly energized. And when we harvest again, it's going to keep turning and going down, or the chance to do that. Now you can also accelerate this, I do believe, even further. So yeah, you can make it accelerated even faster. Perfect. And this can even be automated. But honestly, I don't feel like automating this is going to be the way forward. And that's primarily because of this recipe right here. Remember before when we got into applied energistics? Well, now it's basically the same way. We have a Fluix crystal right here, and we just combine that with the crushed version, and it gives us 64, meaning we're sacrificing some Fluix crystals to make the intro dust. And like I said, this can be looped. So what I recommend is just doing this by hand until you get 32 intro crystals. Huh. Believe it or not, it only took me, yeah, like 2 intro seeds to get to that 32, which, I mean, that's pretty good. And honestly, I'm confident enough that once we have this amount that I can go ahead and set this back the way I had it. That's because I can place these crystals in. They are going to get produced just like this. Man, that works really, really well. I'm going to need to put a gate on here because I almost forgot to give this some power. There we go. But the way this is set up is basically how I'm going to automate a lot of things. This allows me to access these patterns. And then we have the crushing factory, for example, up here. So I can actually automate the process of sending the ingredients into the factory. So this is like the tried and true crafting automation. And so that also means that I think it's now time to also use more functionality from ExtendedAE, and that is the water cell. There is actually an infinite water cell that you can put on here. And I would say it is probably better to use the infinite water cell than just taking a sink and connecting a storage bus up to it, which by the way, would also give you water. But I think having this here is pretty nice, and we can use this water cell and just place it simply inside of our disk drive with all of our other stuff. And we'll now see that we have infinite water in the top right. And we're going to need this for our auto crafting. And so I really hope this isn't confusing, but the reaction chamber here, we just need to make 2 patterns, one for making the dust inside of the crusher. That's pretty straightforward. Make sure to keep this pattern and put it inside of the crusher when we get to that point. But then we also need one for the reaction chamber. Now this says we need a bucket of water to do this craft. And whenever we pull this over, we just want to make sure that this is a bucket of water whenever we create this craft. And we should expect an output of 64. And whenever we create this, all of this should, quote unquote, work. And I keep saying should because there could always be something that goes wrong. So over here is our crusher. We'll put that in. And then right here is the intro. And now we have 33. Let's craft just a set of 1, which by the way is going to force a craft of 64. And when we do this, I'm hoping this fills up, does its operation. We don't have speed upgrades in here, and then sends the output out. And looky there, we now have 64. Now, what happens if we craft another set? Well, it's going to show that we don't have the dust. And this can be a little bit confusing because we do have the pattern here to make more intro dust. But this is where the problem arises. Something to do with AE and the way it's handling this kind of loop here can lead to this problem, but there is a way around it. And that way around it is going to simply be by using this, an ME requester. And this device is really, really cool, and it allows you to keep auto crafting ingredients in stock. So you just need to give it a channel And you can see inside here, I've defined intro crystals and I've defined the intro dust in here. And I have the amount to keep in stock set to 256. So it's going to keep trying to request the item until it reaches 256. And same goes for the amount to keep the dust in stock, 256. And the batch size is how many crafts it's going to try to do in that operation. So we just want a batch size of 1 here. And right now a batch size of 1 right here is just fine. We could set this to 32, but I think right now letting it just run is going to loop this on its own until the intro crystals reach 256. And so this just kind of keeps looping for us and we don't have to bother anything at all. And we can literally watch it happen and take place inside of our inventory right here. You can see it goes one at a time, slowly but surely, taking away, but then looping back around and creating more. And more we are going to need because all of the stuff moving forward is going to require some of those intro crystals and or dust. Now, moving forward, there's a couple of other things to mention and to not get confused by. We do have a reaction chamber from ExtendedAE, and much like with Applied Energistics, it's going to quadruple our output basically. So this is the recipe by default that would involve ExtendedAE in itself, but it's better to use the reaction chamber because it's going to grant us more. And intro infused ingots are going to be our next step in creating all of the stuff from this mod. Okay, so to interrupt here, I'm glad I caught this because it does look like Applied Energistics and JEA may not be telling the truth on how much fluid actually goes inside of, for example, this reaction chamber for certain crafts. Because it looks like I'm getting a little bit left over, which is not what I would expect to happen. So it looks like this craft right here actually is causing this problem. So what we can do is load this back up, and it looks like it's only using half of the water that is allowed here. So we can middle mouse click, and we should be able to set this to 0.5. And whenever we set that to 0.5, that should now fix this whole issue that we were having. Very weird that JEI shows it needs 1 bucket. And this does have me wondering, did I set the right amount for the intro infused? So let's go ahead and craft this. It does show 1 bucket here, but if it leaves water over, which it did, then we know that it's only using half a bucket. Very interesting. So I do have to go back and modify this one as well. Thankfully, there is a clear button in here to actually flush any remaining fluid, and we shouldn't really see any remaining fluid throughout any of these crafts. Sure, this will get fixed in a future update, but for right now, it's just something to kind of keep an eye out on. So now at this point, you can congratulate yourself. Yeah, because we've just basically gotten through this early part of the mod. And now we get to play with the really fun stuff. And so let's craft ourselves a crystal assembler. This is going to be the first steps in actually making anything from this mod. And for this, I'm going to go ahead and place myself a pattern provider down on a cable because we will be using this for automation. Much like everything else, this is going to be automated. Inside of the interface, we also want to make sure that auto export is turned on, and this is what's going to allow it to work. And that beautiful device is going to allow us to make just about anything, but it is perfectly paired with a circuit slicer. Now, the circuit slicer does require a universal press, which shouldn't be too bad for us to make, right? It just requires a few things, including some sky steel. But there's also this one right here, which this recipe is also not too bad. It does, however, require you to make the new press, I do believe. So there's a calculation, logic, engineering, and we need a concurrent press. So the concurrent is actually something new, and it just requires a silicon with the intro, but actually utilizing this mechanic. And remember when I set up AE, if you've been following along in the series, yeah, I ended up getting more presses. So we can either use Essence, which is one way to do it, or you can actually just take your current press and use iron and you can duplicate them like that. But with this, we should end up with the concurrent press. Takes a little bit of time to build up and should automatically export that press inside of our system. And there we go. So now you may be wondering, why are we even making this in the first place? Like, what is this thing actually going to do? And to that, you are about to be blown away. And that's because this circuit slicer can process all of these from the inscribers, all of the presses, and it can do all of the jobs of those straight inside this one machine in block form. Just for example, if we want to make ourselves a printed calculation processor, well, in a circuit slicer, we can use Certus quartz and it will make 4 at a time. Like, that is pretty straightforward. But what about in engineering? Well, it can make 9 at a time. And it just keeps going up from here, right? Gold block, 9 at a time. And this allows everything to be processed so much faster. Block of silicon? Why not? We can go ahead and craft it all. And I can also go ahead and make sure we have auto crafting from Essence coming in. And we now have printed silicon just like that. 9 at a time. Like, this is insanely powerful. And then at the end there, we can, or not to end it there, but we can go into the crystal assembler, and it does 4 at a time just being sent into its internal inventory. This is where the power of ExtendedAE really shines. It makes moving through Applied Energistics just straight. It's just a straight shot, like such a breeze. Because gone are the days of like really complex, like logistical solutions to automating the inscribers. Even though these inscribers are a lot easier now to automate, still, this just makes it even closer to refined storage. Cough, cough. Because, well, refined storage still is way simpler than all of the processing needed to get to this point. But I will say this definitely relieves pressure off of all of the crafting handling that you would have to do to get through this mod. Now, not to stay inside of the crafting interface for a while, I just wanted to show that we can, for example, craft a bunch of these, and it's just going to nearly instant craft them. That is, well, once we get accelerators in here. For example, I put those in now. And let's try that again. Let's just craft some logics. I think that's a really good thing to test out. We always use a ton of logics. And we're going to notice that gets basically insta-crafted. It's just tremendously fast. Meaning you really don't have to worry about crafting a bunch of those 64K storages. Speaking of that, this mod also makes disk drives much larger. So instead of this size, we actually get a huge, I'm almost positive 4 times the storage. And so just after a little bit of crafting, right here is this wonderful ME extended drive. And it holds double, not 4 times, but double, which is still quite a bit of space saving. I could take this entire disk drive here and this and combine it into just 1 block. And this means I can now finally clean up my floor. Oh, I've been needing to do this for a while. But now, in my opinion, where the power really shines with this is through a couple of things. The extension of the pattern providers, allowing the pattern providers to have 4 times more pattern storage per pattern provider, which is fantastic for not only crafting more recipes here when we, for example, run out of spaces, but it also allows us to craft more in here, right? And by the way, we don't even have to move anything. It's just going to allow us to right click to exchange it because they give us pattern provider upgrades. And on top of that, by the way, we also have the molecular assembler upgrades, and these are very powerful as well. The molecular assembler upgrades are going to allow us to have 4 times the processing power of our regular assemblers, just making this whole process a step up even faster. Sorry, not 4 times faster, 2 times faster. I completely got that one wrong, but it'll basically run 8 crafting jobs at one time. Okay, so now I hope you're ready for this one. Yes, because this is my favorite part of this mod. Wireless access to channels. Oh yes, you heard me right. P2P less channel access, meaning we do not even need to touch peer-to-peer at all. Sorry, point-to-point. This all is going to happen through this very inconspicuous ME wireless connector, which you definitely probably missed when looking in JEI, and this is all it takes. And we are going to need at least 1 singularity. But honestly, that is really easy with a sink. And all we have to do is connect up a sink like this and put ourselves a pipe upgrade inside of a fluid pipe. And that leads into an ME condenser. And yeah, we don't even need to leave this running. By the way, this is a really bad way of doing it, but for temporary sake, this is going to be just fine. We have the fluid that is going to go into here, and we just need to switch this into the condensing into singularities portion right here. Before we know it, we're going to have a singularity built up by the time I'm done. I will say though, there's actually some new methods for doing this that are in the mod. So if we actually go into here and extended, there is a thing called an ME void cell. And this is pretty cool, but I think it requires some more complex concepts that I don't really want to cover today. And yep, right when I finished setting up all the autocrafts, by that point, I already had a singularity built up. You just don't want to run this too much on something like a server, for example, because these upgrades can get kind of demanding. Now, the reason I need all of this stuff right here is to make myself a kit. So this is going to be the primary way that we actually link these wireless accesses. And so now this base design should really make a lot more sense. So right down here is where I left room to terminate my cables. And this was intentional because what I wanted to use them for was to connect to this bundle down here, which has 32 channels. And what I can do is I can just place this in. Now you're going to notice this has connected to it. Well, there's some ways that I can prevent this from connecting within AE. And that's by making a cutting knife and using some sort of ingot, for example, iron. And then this makes a cable anchor, and I can actually place the cable anchor right here, and it gives us a nice, clean, uninterrupted connection where this is the only source it's receiving from. And because I really like the idea of going with exposed cables inside of our base here, I might just place it right here on the ceiling, just like this. And we just have to right click here with our kit and just right click the one we want to link it to. And when we do this, these are now going to be linked and connected. And you can actually right click here to see the position in the world where it is connected. And you can even highlight it just in case you were losing it. It even tells you how much power is this causing on the network. Of course, the further away it is from, or the further they are away from each other, the more power it's going to cost. And unfortunately, these do not cross dimensions. That is something that you have to kind of work out later on, and we will whenever we get into some cross-dimensional things. So essentially what this has done is this has given me access to 32 channels from my main network wirelessly. And yes, these would still be useful even if you didn't have a channel limitation, because of course you don't want to have to drag your cables all over the base. That just gets super, super tedious. So let's go ahead and put this to good use. And I'm thinking energizing orb automation? Yes. This is actually very, very simple to do, and all we really need is an energizing orb and a pattern provider. Now for this automation, I want to make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible, or at least to my eye. So I'm running my cables kind of exposed to keep that nice factory vibe, but right here, I'm going to place a pattern provider, and I want to place my energizing orb directly on top. The cool thing is the pattern provider should be able to send ingredients into the energizing orb this way. And so just to test this very theory, I went ahead and made a processing pattern that should send some Certus quartz into here. So let's go ahead and request one Certus quartz, which is going to pull 5 of them. And voila, it does. Okay, so this actually makes it super, super simple for us. Knowing that this can inject into this, well, we should be able to now figure out a way to auto pull out of here. That, my friends, is where the power of modular routers comes into play yet again. So all I need is a puller modular MK2. We can shift right click to have it pull from the bottom. And the reason I'm using the Mark II is to make it wireless. And then that is going to go down here. So we then need to send into the pattern provider, right? So let's go ahead and remove this temporarily again. And let's place in our pattern provider. And what we need to do on the sender is just simply make sure it has a place to go. Now we don't need a Mark II sender for this. Technically, we could have used just a regular sender. And you know what? I am going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and use this sender and just make sure it's set to up, and should be pretty straightforward. Modular router, nice and hidden. We put this in here and this in here. And what it should do is it'll pull out of the bottom of the energizing orb, and then it's going to send it back into the pattern provider. And that will complete the autocrafts. And that, paired with some speed upgrades in that modular router, makes this operation insanely fast. So this is going to be my power room. And also, by the way, where I'm going to be generating power, I'm going to go ahead and put my gates here, and we'll go ahead and just simply place in some energizing rods. And this is ready for me to build patterns for. So now you may be wondering, why does this even matter at this point? Well, what this is going to open up is the ability for us to craft more things that generate more power. And in mod packs, more power equals better. Well, it means more infrastructure can be made to utilize that power. And something you may notice me doing right now, I am actually making block forms because I want to craft this right from the bat by blocks. This is going to make things so much quicker if we just simply craft all of these by blocks and then uncraft them from their block form. So let's go ahead and put our auto crafting to the test, and let's go ahead and make a couple of blocks of energizing steel. How fast is it going to be to craft this? Now, we may have noticed right off the bat, there's a little bit of an issue, and that's because we have to change a mode inside of our pattern provider to make this really, really work. And this is what makes this super, super useful. We can either go blocking mode, which will ignore the contents of the inventory, or you can set it to do not push crafting ingredients in it if the inventory contains a pattern input already. And that should reliably allow us to cancel this recipe. Let's go ahead and cancel this and cancel this one and reliably request this. And it should only put that individual set in first, and then it will send a new set whenever there's no longer these crafting recipes in here. Another way you could go about doing this is you could, for example, set it to lock crafting mode. And there's a mode right here that will lock until the primary crafting result has returned. But that returning needs to happen back inside of this pattern provider. But now I just found an issue that of course is going to happen if you have other inventories attached to the pattern provider. And that is, it will actually try to send to any side of the pattern provider that anything is connected to, which means this buffer, which doesn't really make sense, right? So how do we actually fix that? Well, we can use a Certus wrench and actually rotate this, and you'll see there is an arrow on here telling us where the side is. And notice, by the way, if it is facing this way, the channel is not there. We want this actually facing up to only send up the ingredients into this direction, and then any other side can actually accept the items in. So if we set this to, for example, the mode that we had it in, which is just push to ingredients here, or push the crafting recipe there, that should be more than fine. And let's put the patterns back in. Perfect. And now we should be able to request like 4, for example, and we'll see the items go in. And then when it's finished, which by the way is going to take a minute to actually upgrade these, it then sent a new set in. So just be careful whenever you place this in. Issues are going to arise, and this is kind of how I like to go about solving them. This little tidbit of knowledge, though, just may not be known, but I'm glad I was able to show it. So with this, I have a lot of grinding to do with leveling up our power, but we're going to be diving into some more advanced power stuff here soon, and this is only going to be more power in the future, which I'm pretty excited for. Now, something to also mention, I went ahead and made the other terminals, which is really nice. These are currently unlinked, but it's not really going to matter because I'm actually going to combine them with the other terminals. So this is all going to create a nice condensed terminal, and we have access to all of them all in one. You can either change the buttons right here by swapping, and you can swap into this so you can make your patterns in your inventory. But I personally like to set hotkeys, and I like to set them to Control E, Control R, and Control F, allowing me to autocraft with Control R and Control F to access like the terminal to be able to paste the recipe in, or place the recipe in. But now with our extended access to Applied Energistics, this whole mod really just is going to explode open. I just can't say that enough, because once you have all of this, everything becomes a little bit easier, allowing more autocrafts to be made and just making access to things a bit faster. And so if faster is something you're looking forward to, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, so you can learn more tips and tricks just like I've been showing through all of these videos throughout this series, just so you don't miss out. So click that subscribe button, give this video a huge thumbs up, and well, with that, it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks is going to go out to Nate Esther. Thank you so much for your amazing support and choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting in one of the best ways possible, and absolutely going above and beyond. Thank you so very much. And of course, guys, I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And as always, thanks for watching.